She didn't cry the morning they told her she would marry the wealthiest cowboy in the territory. She simply stared at the cracked floorboards of her father's house and wondered how a girl's life could be sold like cattle. 19 felt too young to carry the weight of a promise she never made, yet the town whispered that marrying a millionaire rancher was a blessing. She knew the truth. It was an escape for her father, not for her. The dusty road to the Grant Ranch stretched endlessly before her, each step echoing the memories she wished she could outrun. Her mother's old shawl clung to her shoulders as if trying to pull her back home, but home had stopped belonging to her the moment the wedding contract was signed. She swallowed her fear, determined not to tremble in front of the man she had never met. When she finally reached the ranch, she expected arrogance, gold, and the cold smile of a man too rich to feel anything. Instead, she found silence, heavy, unmoving silence, as the gates opened. Workers paused, their hats tipping low, not out of respect but out of pity. She wondered what kind of man earns pity from his own people. Inside the grand house, the air smelled of cedarwood and something faintly bitter, like sorrow hidden behind polished walls. Her escort abandoned her at a carved wooden door, muttering that, the boss, was waiting. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the handle, her pulse thundering in her ears. She felt like a lamb being delivered to an unknown fate. He stood by the window when she entered, tall and broad-shouldered, the fading sun outlining him in gold. His cowboy hat shadowed most of his face, but she saw the stiffness in his posture, the tension in his clenched jaw. He didn't turn to greet her. He simply said, "I'm Clay Grant. I suppose they've told you everything." His voice was low, controlled, too controlled. She wanted to scream that no, nobody had told her anything except that she was now his bride. But she nodded, holding on to whatever dignity she had left. For the first time, he looked at her, really looked, and something flickered in his eyes. Not cruelty, not desire, but a quiet sorrow that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. Their wedding was rushed, held in the dusty courtyard under a sky that looked too bright for such a bleak moment. The townspeople watched like it was a performance, whispering behind gloved fingers, some thrilled, others horrified. She kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. When the vows ended, Clay didn't touch her hand or offer a smile. Instead, he cleared his throat and announced, "Before we celebrate, I have a gift for my bride." The crowd leaned forward eagerly, hungry for gossip. She braced herself, expecting jewelry or some show of wealth meant to impress the town. But Clay's expression stayed somber. He led her toward a smaller stable behind the main barn, its doors locked with a heavy iron bar. The workers exchanged anxious glances as they followed, the tension thickened the air. She wondered if she should fear whatever was inside. Clay slid the bar free, his hand steady but his breath uneven. He paused before opening it, as if fighting a ghost only he could see. Inside the dim stable, she saw a single stall lit by a lantern. A shape moved in the shadows, the slow, gentle shifting of something alive. When Clay lifted the lantern higher, her breath caught. It wasn't a horse, it wasn't livestock, it was a young boy, pale, thin, and hiding behind a blanket. The child's eyes widened when he saw them. "This," Clay said quietly, "is my brother's son. The town believes he died with his parents. They're wrong. He's been hidden here for years, for his safety." His voice cracked for the first time. She felt the weight of his secret, heavier than gold, heavier than grief. The town's cold stares suddenly made sense. She stepped closer to the child, softening her voice so she wouldn't frighten him. The boy clung to the blanket but peeked out at her with cautious curiosity. Something warm bloomed in her chest, a feeling she hadn't expected at all. Without thinking, she knelt and whispered, "You're safe. I promise." Clay watched her, his guarded expression shifting into surprise. Maybe even hope. He had feared she would recoil, judge him, or walk away. Instead, she reached out to the child with a gentleness he hadn't seen in years. For a moment, the heavy shadows in his eyes eased. When they stepped outside again, the townspeople were still waiting, expecting drama or spectacle. Clay lifted his chin and declared, "My wedding gift is truth. My nephew lives, and from today forward, he will live openly." Gasps rippled through the crowd, anger and shock flashing across familiar faces. The entire town stood frozen. She stood beside Clay, realizing suddenly that her marriage wasn't a prison, it was a storm she had been thrown into. But somewhere in the chaos, there was a spark of something unexpected, something that might one day become freedom, or even happiness. The moment the town learned the boy was alive, whispers turned into open accusations. People who once praised Clay's wealth now questioned his sanity, muttering that no man hides a child unless he's covering a scandal. She watched the tension rise like a storm cloud over the ranch, but she also noticed something else. Clay didn't flinch. He protected the boy with the same fierce calm he had shown the day she arrived. That night, as lantern light flickered across the wooden walls of the ranch house, she heard Clay pacing the hallway outside her door. He paused several times, as if gathering courage, but never knocked. When she finally stepped outside, he froze. Their silence held 1,000 unspoken fears, but she broke it gently, asking if he wanted to talk. He nodded, almost shyly, leading her downstairs. He confessed everything by the hearth. The accident that killed his brother, the threats that followed, and the greedy men who wanted the boy gone to claim the Grant fortune. His voice trembled, not with weakness but with the weight of years spent alone in a battle no one else believed in. She realized then that he wasn't cold, he was exhausted from fighting the world. As he finished, he looked away, expecting judgment. Instead, she placed her hand over his, surprising both of them. His breath hitched, as if he wasn't used to kindness. That single touch shifted something between them, no romance yet, just a fragile bridge of understanding. He whispered a soft thank you, like the words were foreign to him. Over the next days, she found herself drawn to the boy. She taught him how to hold a pencil, how to read simple words, how to trust a stranger. With every lesson, Clay lingered nearby, pretending to fix tools or check windows, but always watching. She caught his glances sometimes, soft, hopeful, almost protective, and felt a warmth she hadn't expected. The townspeople didn't stay silent for long. A group of them rode to the ranch, demanding the boy be handled properly. When she stepped onto the porch beside Clay, shielding the child behind her skirts, the men sneered, calling her foolish for defending something that wasn't her problem. But in her heart, he was already part of her family. Clay stood tall, fury simmering beneath his calm voice as he warned them to leave. His authority might have been enough, but she added her voice too, steady and unwavering. The townsmen looked stunned that a young bride would challenge them. Eventually, they retreated, though the threat in their eyes promised trouble later. That night, Clay thanked her again, but this time there was no distance in his tone. For the first time, he smiled, a real, warm smile that softened every rough edge of his face. She felt her own chest tighten unexpectedly, realizing that somewhere along the chaos, she had stopped fearing him. Instead, she had started believing in him. A week later, trouble returned in the form of a fire lit near the barn. Flames roared dangerously close to the stable where the boy slept. Without hesitation, she rushed inside before Clay even saw her move. Smoke choked the air, but she found the boy trembling beneath his blanket and carried him out as the fire crackled near the roof. Clay met her at the doorway, terror in his eyes. When he lifted the boy from her arms, relief nearly dropped him to his knees. He pulled her into a breathless embrace, his voice breaking as he whispered that he couldn't lose her too. It was the first time he said, her, like she was truly his. The fire was controlled by sunrise, and although the damage was heavy, the ranch survived. The town was forced to face the truth. She had risked her life for a child who wasn't hers, and Clay had stood against them all. Their hatred began to shift, slowly, into reluctant respect. In the quiet days that followed, something tender bloomed between her and Clay. He started joining her and the boy during lessons, sometimes sitting so close she felt the warmth of his arm brushing hers. But it wasn't discomfort she felt. It was safety, a rare and beautiful feeling she had never known before. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Clay walked her to the old oak tree by the barn. He apologized for her forced marriage, for the silence, for every fear she carried alone. She didn't let him finish. She told him she no longer felt trapped, that somewhere between the secrets, fires, and whispered danger, she had found a home she never expected. His eyes softened, and he reached for her hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. The moment their fingers intertwined, something inside her settled, like the final piece falling into place. The boy ran toward them then, laughter echoing across the pasture, and Clay lifted him with a joy she had never seen before. The town that once pitied her now watched her with awe. A girl sold into a marriage had become the heart of a family, a protector of a legacy, and the woman who brought warmth back to a millionaire cowboy's life. She didn't rewrite her fate, she transformed it. And when Clay finally leaned in one quiet evening and kissed her for the first time, it wasn't out of duty or desperation. It was the kiss of a man who had learned to hope again, and of a woman who had found love where she least expected it, right in the place she once feared most.